Normally I would say like day whatever, but there's no day anymore. I'm past day 100. So I need something. I need something to start and end these videos with. I think it's going to be, so here's the thing. Yeah. Let's try that. So here's the thing. I'm going to try to do this video all in one take, no cuts. That's probably not going to happen. But I've always been interested in low light capabilities of cameras because, you know, I had the original A7S, actually still have it. I'm recording this on the original A7S, and I actually have had two of them. And it's one of the cameras that I've used more than probably any other camera. Maybe the C300. I might have used the C300 more at this point, but I used the A7S a ton. And not so much anymore, but in previous years, it was like I used it all the time. And one of the reasons that I got it was for events. It can handle such high ISOs, and the noise level was very acceptable at like 10, 12, even 16. I think I pushed it to 20,000 ISO at times. Just gave it a lot of versatility. And that just always, low light capability is something I always look at when I'm looking at a new camera body. You know, I shoot more run and gun. My brother-in-law is a cinematographer, and he lights. He stays at native ISOs. That's all. He's going to be at the native ISO. He's going to light it properly. He's going to use aperture, ND, whatever he needs to do to bring the light down or boost exposure without touching the ISO. And but I don't do that. ISO. I generally want to keep a fixed aperture, and I try. You know, I like having a lot of versatility in just quickly adjusting exposure with ISO. And so I've done several tests before. I've put the A7S up against the R6. I've done low light tests with the Fx3, and now I'm putting the A7S just kind of as a benchmark, because I feel like that's like the benchmark camera, even though we've now progressed. Cameras are better in low light. There are better cameras in low light than the A7S now. But the a6600, the A7R IV, the Fx3, and then the original A7S are the cameras that I'm testing today. And they're all going to be in Cine 2. I know that the Fx3 has a dual base ISO at 812,000, which is super, super clean, but we're not shooting this in log. I was trying to make the cameras all the same. So if you're not, you know, wanting to deal with log to grade it or whatever, this is kind of the noise levels you're going to get in a more standard picture profile. So obviously at ISO 100, all of these cameras are going to be really clean. And all of the lower ISOs on up to like 800, even 1600, they're all pretty good. I tried to make the shot as similar as possible. I tried to make the exposure as similar as possible. So I'm stopping down on the f-stop as we increase the ISO, and I'm adjusting light, and I think I eventually had to actually adjust shutter speed so that they would be somewhat similar. I cropped in and zoomed in on the stormtrooper's face so that you can kind of see the difference between light and shadow and really have a better idea, so you can see the noise more easily, especially with the YouTube compression. I did export this in 4K, and they were all shot in 4K, but actually the A7S, yes, the A7S was, because I recorded that to a Ninja, so that was 4K as well, but I've had to shrink them down, so it's going to be a little harder to see. So hopefully me zooming in on the face helps you all see the noise. And also, obviously, this is just for video. I'm not evaluating the photo capability of these cameras. At 1600, you're starting to see a little bit of noise, especially in the a6600 and A7R IV. I think it's totally usable still. A6600 and the A7R IV at ISO 2000. You know, I think it's still usable, but you get up to 3200 and then to 6400, you're getting into I think the unusable range, whereas the Fx3 and the A7S are completely usable at those higher ISOs. And thank you to Nathan, who helped me do this test. He owned the A6600 and owns the A7R IV. ISO 10,000. I think the A6600, A7R IV, not really usable. I mean, it's usable, but it doesn't look good. The Fx3, A7S, I think they're still usable, but you definitely are starting to notice the noise at those ISOs. Same thing with 12,800. 16,000. I mean, the a6600 is trash. I think the A7R IV is as well. Is long past the usable point. The Fx3, A7S at 12,000, 16,000, 20,000. I think it's usable in a pinch, but it's gonna be noticeable. And much past 20,000, you are, even with the A7S, it's, Fx3 is not usable. And now it's like, it's a race. So the A6600 and the A7R IV max out at 32,000. So they're just gonna sit there. But the Fx3 and the A7S go all the way up to 409,000. And now it's just kind of a race. I honestly feel like the Fx3 is behind, like 20, 25, 32, 40,000. But then you get up to crazy ISOs like 100,000, and I feel like the Fx3 catches up. And I've often thought, why would Sony allow these cameras to go this high? Obviously, the image is terrible. Actually, I take that back. The Fx3 is definitely winning over the A7S at ISOs 64, 80, 100, 128. It's so much cleaner. And you get the purple like color shifting with the A7S, whereas the Fx3, at these high ISOs, the colors are staying pretty consistent, even though it's very noisy. But back to, I've often thought, why would you ever use ISOs this high? I guess if you're in a situation when there's almost no light and it's like an event or something that's happening in real time, you don't have time to light it and you need to capture it. I mean, it's a visible image. Like, it is usable if it's in a documentary style video. So, in that case, I've never had to use ISOs this high, but it could theoretically be useful. And obviously the Fx3 A7S top out at 409,600, and absolutely trash images. I think at this, it's kind of a toss-up as to which is worse. Obviously the A7S has some serious color shifting problems. So we'll give it to the Fx3, but still amazes me how high you can go with the A7S line of Sony cameras, because the Fx3 is essentially an A7S III. It's got the internals of an A7S III. The results are not perhaps so surprising. The A6600, the Sony crop sensor cameras have always struggled in low light. I used to have an A6300 and I got rid of it because it just couldn't handle ISOs much over, 1600. And the A7R IV, it's not actually so surprising that struggles a little bit at higher ISOs, because its pixel density is so huge. It has such a high megapixel count, and therefore the pixels are smaller, and naturally it's going to struggle in low light. That's one of the reasons that, like, the Fx3, the A7S, A7S2, A7S III don't have super high megapixels for stills. I think they're like 12 megapixels. That means the pixels are larger, more surface area. They naturally do better in low light. And, Fx3 obviously gave the A7S a run for its money. I would say it actually did better. It's definitely a newer camera, newer sensor, but it's the same series, so it should do. I'd say pretty comparable. Hopefully that gave you some idea of how noisy the image gets and how usable it is at different ISO levels, so you can determine how far you want to push it. I wouldn't push the A6600 much over 1600, maybe 3200. Same way with the A7R IV. And then, the Fx3 does really well at high ISOs. So does the A7S. I've used the A7S in events all the way up to, like, I think 20,000 and not done any denoising. And it was pretty noisy at that point. I would say that was years ago. Now, I feel like there's less tolerance for noise now, so I probably wouldn't push it that high, or I'd do some denoising. And you can push it even higher with some denoising software. Anyway, it was kind of fun. I like these. This might be the last one. I don't know. Maybe I'll do one again at some point. But hopefully that was helpful. And it's been a while. I was going to put one of these out every week. You know, after I stopped doing it every day, I was going to do one every week, and it's been 3 weeks. So I took a little break, but I went on vacation, so whatever. Anyway, so here's the thing.